You are on your knees in the sand. The ground beneath them burns, searing through skin and bone. Pain pulses upward with every breath you take. The iron band locked around your neck is pulled so tight that swallowing feels like choking. A heavy chain links you to 11 other women. Each movement drags all of you together. Listen to their breathing. Some breathe fast and uneven. Some sob without sound. One murmurs prayers in a language you have never heard before. A man's shadow stretches across the ground and covers you. For half a second, the sun disappears. The heat eases. Then, hands grab your face. Fingers dig into your jaw and force it open. Your mouth is pried apart. Cold fingers press against your teeth. They scrape along them one by one. They drag across your gums. They push deeper, reaching the back of your throat. Your body reacts. You retch. Your stomach twists. He does not stop. He lifts your tongue, searching for sickness. He studies your eyes closely. Then he pulls down your lower lip the same way someone inspects an animal before purchase. Because that is exactly what you are now. 12 days ago, you were the daughter of a village chief in the Sahel. 12 days ago, your life had meaning. 12 days ago, your mother spoke your name each morning as the sun rose. She is dead. You saw how it happened. You remember the moment clearly. And you kept walking. Because the men holding blades made the rule simple. Stop moving and you would lie beside her. There is a word in Arabic for what you have become. Jariya. It is usually translated as slave, but that word is too soft, too clean. It hides the truth beneath it. What the word truly means is this. Your body no longer belongs to you. Your future exists only in the decisions of a buyer. Your past has been erased completely. The man examining you steps away. He nods once. Another man opens a leather pouch. Metal coins clink softly as they change hands. You have just been sold again. The third time this month. And the place they are taking you is somewhere future historians will spend centuries trying to pretend never existed. This is the Arab slave trade. 14 million Africans, 13 centuries. A system so efficient at destroying people that almost no descendants survived to tell what happened. Most of the world knows one version of slavery, the Atlantic trade. Ships crossing oceans, chains below decks, plantations in the Americas. 12 million Africans transported across water over 400 years. That history has museums. It has monuments. It has films and textbooks. Children are taught about it in school. Politicians speak about it publicly. But there was another trade. Older, longer, and by some measures, even larger. The Arab slave trade began in the 7th century, shortly after the rise of Islam and the rapid Arab expansions across North Africa. It did not disappear quickly. It did not collapse with one law or one war. It continued for more than 1,000 years. Saudi Arabia formally outlawed slavery in 1962. Mauritania followed in 1981. Those are not ancient dates carved into distant history. Those are years living people remember. There are men and women alive today who were born in societies where this trade still operated legally. Between 14 and 17 million Africans were taken from their homes and moved northward into North Africa, the Middle East, and the Arabian Peninsula. Some historians argue the real number was higher. Records were incomplete. Deaths were rarely written down. Entire caravans vanished without leaving documentation. More people, across more time, across routes stretching through 3 continents. And yet almost nobody speaks about it. Why? Because this system was designed to leave no trace behind. And it succeeded. In the Americas today, roughly 45 million people of African descent exist as living evidence of what happened. Their presence keeps memory alive. Their struggles ensure the story cannot be erased. In the Middle East, after 1,300 years of importing millions of Africans, There is almost nothing. Small communities in Yemen, scattered families in southern Iraq, a few thousand Afro-Moroccans, fragments where millions should exist. So where did 14 million people go? The answer is the darkest part of this history. The men were castrated. This is not speculation. It is not rumor. It is documented in hundreds of primary sources across centuries. Arab slave traders systematically castrated African males at rates estimated between 80 and 90%. The procedures were carried out at specific locations along the trade routes. Certain sites became infamous for it. Egyptian monastic centers were among the most notorious. Coptic Christian monks developed techniques meant to slightly improve survival. Slightly. For every man who survived the operation, between 3 and 5 died from blood loss, infection, or shock. Some accounts suggest even higher mortality. Consider the arithmetic. If a trader needed 100 living eunuchs to sell at market, he might begin with 400 or 500 men. The rest died screaming in the sand. The logic was merciless, but consistent. Castrated slaves could not reproduce. They could not form families. They could not create communities that might one day resist. They left no descendants who could later demand freedom. They worked. They aged. They died. And when they were gone, they were replaced by new captives from the next raid. This continued generation after generation for 13 centuries. But the women served a different purpose. They were kept whole, kept fertile, preserved specifically for what their bodies could produce. What happened to them appears in historical records only through euphemisms, in silences, in carefully chosen words, in details pushed between lines. Writers of the time considered the reality too indecent to describe openly. The machine required constant fuel, and it never stopped.
Arab merchants were rarely the ones who attacked villages themselves. They were traders, financiers, organizers of vast commercial systems that stretched across continents. They did not usually carry swords into settlements. Instead, they built incentives. Weapons flowed south into Africa, firearms imported through Arab intermediaries, textiles, luxury items, salt, priceless in many sub-Saharan regions. In return, human beings. Entire African kingdoms were pulled into this economy. The Kingdom of Dahomey, in what is now Benin, became one of the largest suppliers. Its political power and wealth grew dependent on yearly slave raids against neighboring peoples. The Sultanate of Zanzibar controlled East African routes. The Funj Sultanate dominated the Nile corridor. Tuareg groups controlled trans-Saharan passages. Wars were no longer fought for land. They were fought for people. Villages were attacked at dawn when resistance was weakest. Warriors surrounded homes while families slept. The violence was sudden and overwhelming. Men who resisted were killed immediately. Men who surrendered or evaluated on the spot. Age, health, strength. Young, strong men were separated for castration and sale. Older men without market value were often executed where they stood. Women faced different calculations. Age mattered more than anything. Girls too young required years of feeding before usefulness. Women too old brought reduced profit. The ideal range was roughly 13 to 25. Young enough for decades of exploitation, strong enough to survive the journey. Physical appearance affected price dramatically. Different markets desired different features, and experienced traders knew those preferences well. Ethiopian women commanded especially high prices. In many markets, they sold for double or triple what others did. Those selected were separated immediately. They received marginally better treatment during transport, not for mercy, never mercy. Damaged property sold for less. Protecting investment was simple economics. Families were torn apart at capture sites. Mothers pulled from children, husbands from wives, sisters from brothers. European missionaries who witnessed these moments describe scenes of unbearable grief, screaming, clinging, bodies dragged apart while people begged for seconds more together. One missionary later wrote that those sounds followed him for the rest of his life. Even decades later, he could still hear mothers crying out their children's names. Those cries echoed across Africa for 13 centuries. Almost no one outside heard them. Then came the Sahara. The trans-Saharan routes were not measured in distance. They were measured in death. Imagine walking across a continent in chains, with almost no water beneath a sun that kills. Some routes exceeded 2,000 miles. The journey lasted months when conditions were good. Conditions were never good. Daytime temperatures regularly passed 120 degrees. Sand burned skin on contact. There was no shade for hundreds of miles. Then night fell. The same desert that crushed the body by day froze it after dark. Water was rationed with brutal calculation. Camels drank first. Camels were expensive. Camels were essential. Slaves were cheaper. Slaves were replaceable. Captives received whatever water remained after the animals drank. Cracked lips, swollen tongues, the certainty that there was nothing left to drink. Food was minimal, dried dates, occasional meat, just enough to keep legs moving, never enough to preserve health. Mortality rates were catastrophic. Historians estimate between 20 and 30% died during crossings. Some caravans lost half their human cargo. Others arrived with more than 60% dead. Those who collapsed were abandoned where they fell. Stopping to bury bodies slowed the caravan. Stopping to help the dying risked losing the living. The economy did not allow compassion. People were left alive but too weak to continue, sitting in the sand as the caravan moved on, waiting for death. The routes became marked with bones. Explorers crossing the desert described trails littered with skeletons, valleys bleached white, not by sand, but by human remains. Skulls scorched by the sun, rib cages half buried in drifting dunes. These were not ancient remains. They were recent additions to paths that had consumed bodies for more than 1,000 years. Hundreds of thousands, perhaps millions, absorbed into the desert itself. Silent proof of a trade the world chose not to see. For the women who survived the crossing, arrival did not mean safety. It meant only that immediate death had paused. Slave markets in the Arab world were ancient institutions, refined over centuries into systems of terrifying efficiency. Cairo's market operated continuously for over 1,000 years. By the time European observers recorded it, generations of traders had perfected pricing, inspection, and categorization. Buyers arrived from across the Islamic world. Ottoman officials from Constantinople, Persian merchants from Isfahan, wealthy Arabs from Damascus and Baghdad, traders from the Gulf seeking servants, laborers, and women for private use. Even Europeans participated secretly despite official bans. Markets were divided by function. Laborers in one section, skilled workers in another, domestic servants elsewhere. Behind screens, out of public view, women were sold privately. Inspections followed a strict order. Teeth first, to estimate age and remaining years of use, skin for disease and scars, hair texture, body examined with detached precision. European travelers left accounts so explicit, editors later censored them. Women were forced to walk, turn, display themselves. Buyers examined them with the same cold calculation used on livestock. Prices varied by origin and appearance. Young women from favored regions could sell for the equivalent of many years of wages. The highest prices were paid privately by agents of elite households. Zanzibar became the largest slave market in the Indian Ocean world. At its height, tens of thousands passed through each year. David Livingstone witnessed it himself. He wrote that exaggeration was impossible, that the horrors defied language. Even after official bans, the trade continued underground for decades. Ships arrived at night. Sales occurred in hidden places. Demand never vanished. Profit remained too great. Where demand exists, supply finds a way. Some women were taken into harems. Imperial palaces held hundreds, sometimes thousands. Life inside was political warfare. Favor meant survival. Bearing a son meant power. Alliances formed, rivals were undermined, poisoning was common. For African women, it meant total erasure. New names, new language, new religion. No memory of who they had been was permitted. Others became domestic servants, cooking, cleaning, obeying whenever commanded. Consent did not exist. Children born were legally free, but the mothers often remained enslaved. Over generations, African ancestry blended, faded, disappeared. That was the final erasure. No descendants, no memory, no evidence. The Atlantic trade left millions who remember. This one left silence. 14 million people erased so completely we do not even know their names. The woman in the market, whose teeth were inspected, whose body was judged, once had a name her mother whispered with love. We will never know it. What we know is this. She existed, she suffered, she endured what no human being should ever endure. For 13 centuries, millions like her fed a machine designed to consume them entirely. There are no monuments for them, no memorial days, no speeches, only sand covering bones no one will ever identify. Remember her not as a number, not as a statistic. Remember her as someone's daughter, someone who once laughed, someone who had a name before it was taken. Those 14 million will ever receive. Dark Chronicler does not soften history. It shows what truly happened.